Well, good morning and happy Sunday. It feels like it's been a while since I have brought a teaching on Sunday. I don't know if that's just me or the way the schedule's worked out. Nonetheless, I'm excited today to be able to bring you the next point in our look into the book of Ecclesiastes. We've been going through it just for a little bit now, and we'll probably, as far as my teaching goes on Sundays, we'll be in it for the rest of the year. Before we get into the text, I have a question for you to consider. Obviously, it's rhetorical. I mean, you're in a video. But have you ever had the desire to pursue justice in your own way? Now, the answer, if you're true to yourself, is of course you have. Haven't we all? When we were even a little child, and I have three children, and my wife runs a daycare, and I've been around children. I'm, maybe 40% of children's pastor here at the church. But children have this built-in desire to get justice. When a child takes another child's toy, they want justice, and usually not like some parent coming in and setting the record straight. Usually it's some level of street justice in a way. Maybe vengeance is a better word. And that might mean taking that kid's toy or throwing something at them or some other form of retaliation. The thing is we don't often grow out of that. Maybe we gain some self-control as we get bigger and older, but people have a tendency to hate when others have wronged them. See, we have a natural desire to get vengeance, to do something in retaliation because something was done to us. As I was going through the text and thinking about this, I was reminded of a time when myself and my wife, we've been married for 10 years this June, but we've been dating since high school. And in high school, I had two motorcycles over the years, but I just drove my parents' car when it was time to use a car. And we were going down, if you're local to the area, we were going down Rocky Lake Road. And on one of the bends by the houses area, there was a basketball right in the lane, just in the right spot where if a motorcyclist was coming through, that'd be prime to where they were in the middle of this little turn. And so I pulled the car over, I had my blinker on, I got out and I took the basketball and I threw it into the yard of one of the houses nearby because, I was worried another biker might come through and hit the thing. And so then I got back in the car and proceeded to drive onto the road. Apparently, I don't remember them being that close, but who knows, I was a kid basically. Another car had been coming down the road and they thought that I had cut them off. And so if you're familiar to the area, I went under the overpass and there's a number of industrial buildings. So I turned in there to turn around because we were supposed to be going the other way down Rocky Lake Road. And when I had pulled my car in so that there was the building there with the intention of reversing and then coming out, the car that I had cut off peeled into the area and parked right behind me. So I was pinned between their car and the wall. And three men got out. I'd put them either at their late 20s, early 30s, and a woman. And they seemed, by my observation, to be under the influence of something. And they proceeded to punch on the windows and yell and curse at us. And basically, I don't know, they wanted to attack me in some way. Just road rage beyond anything that I had experienced before. And I sat in that car as like a 16-year-old kid, basically, frozen in fear, not quite sure what to do. Looking back, there's a lot of things I could have done. Called the authorities for starters, or just got out of there, which probably would have caused damage. But at any rate, they eventually left. We sat there for a minute, kind of shocked, and then proceeded to go back down Rocky Lake Road to where we were initially going. The problem is that as we were driving down the road, I saw their little red car parked at one of the houses there. It was definitely the same car. And what happened for months after was daydreams of getting vengeance upon them, of driving by in the night and throwing a brick through their car window or vandalizing it or doing something to make my mind feel as if I had gotten justice at some way. I had this natural desire. That might sound a little extreme because I'm vocalizing it, but many of us probably can relate to that. Now, here's the thing. That desire is from the old, sinful, cursed Chris. And that guy's dead. I've put him in the grave. And so I have to say no to that desire. And that's what I did. I initially, at some point, I said, I have to stop thinking about this. I have to stop imagining these hypothetical situations. Lord, I hand this over to you. I forgive them. Help me to let it go. Now, here's the thing. As I've said this many times over, just because something is natural doesn't mean that it's proper. We want to retaliate because the things went the way that we don't want them to go. But our retaliation and our desire to get justice or vengeance, whatever word we want to use, is not proper. And our nature, as I've said before, we're in this cursed nature, and then as Christians we come into a redeemed nature, aiming towards a perfected nature. But this desire of vengeance and getting even and justice and causing harm to those who have caused harm to us, that comes out of the curse of sin. And so just because it feels natural does not mean that it's something that is good. Nature doesn't always equal good because we live in a cursed world. So with all that said as an introduction, today we are looking at Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verses 16 to 22. And it reads, Moreover, I saw under the sun that in the place of justice, even there was wickedness, and in the place of righteousness, even there was wickedness. I said in my heart, God will judge the righteous and the wicked, for there is a time for every matter and for every work. I said in my heart with regard to the children of man that God is testing them, that they may see that they themselves are but beasts. For what has happened to the children of man will happen to the beasts, is the same. As one dies, so dies the other. They all have the same breath, and man has no advantage over the beasts, for all is vanity. All go to one place. All are from the dust, and to the dust all return. Who knows whether the spirit of a man goes upward and the spirit of the beast goes down to the earth? So I saw that there is nothing better than that a man should rejoice in his work, for that is his lot. Who can bring him to see what will be after him? So this is a wonderful piece of text. There's a lot of wisdom here, a lot that we can learn from it. The preacher, this character who's bringing us this lesson, he is reflecting on his observation of society. And he comes to this conclusion in his observation that in the place of justice, there was wickedness. And in the place of righteousness, there was wickedness. Two areas of society. One, I would say, is easier to label or assign to a system and to people than the other. But that they both have been perverted and twisted so that there's wickedness where there should be justice and righteousness. There's an understanding, there's an expectation of justice. In fact, you can look to the law and see the measure of justice that should be in place. And also there's an understanding in society and in the human heart of righteousness, of what that should look like. So in the area of justice, we could say that there's the courts, there's systems, there's those who uphold and enforce the law, that when something goes wrong, when evil acts are committed in society, that the society has a system in place and people in positions and power that can bring about justice. And in the ancient Jewish context, the one that we're looking at today, they had the law. They had the law of Moses that was written out and explained to them. They had a solid reference point that they could look to in the scriptures of what judgment should look like and what justice is to be for each different circumstance. But what does the preacher find? He finds that in the place of justice, he finds wickedness. That would be a very disheartening, depressing, frustrating realization. But it goes beyond that. Then there's the place of righteousness. Now, this might not be as easy to tie to an official or to a system. I mean, there would have been priests and the religious law and the temples and whatnot. But even then, there's the idea of society, that there should be an understanding of righteousness, an agreed upon standard of right and wrong, and simply a moral code that people measure themselves and others against. But in this place of righteousness, there was wickedness. I'm reminded of what Isaiah says in chapter 5 of his writings. He says, "Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness, who put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter." The idea of you're taking what one thing should be and you're replacing it with its direct opposite. See, in a healthy society, you would see justice in the place of justice. And you would see righteousness in the place of righteousness. But the curse of sin has perverted people. Their lusts and their passions have driven them far, very far from how things should be. And so in this cursed world, things fall drastically short. They become infected with wickedness. And doesn't that feel like today? When we read the news or we listen to the news or we just simply observe the world around us, we're reminded of what it looks like to live in a wicked society. When I look around today, it feels like a fulfillment of 2 Timothy 3, where we read, it says, "But understand this, that in the last days there will come times of difficulty, for people will be lovers of self, lovers of money, proud, arrogant, abusive, disobedient to their parents, ungrateful, unholy, heartless, unappeasable, slanderous, without self-control, brutal, not loving good, treacherous, reckless, swollen with conceit, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, having the appearance of goodness, but denying its power, godliness, but denying its power. Avoid such people, for among them are those who creep into households and capture weak women, burdened with sins and led astray by various passions, always learning and never able to arrive at a knowledge of the truth." It feels like today. In Romans 1, we get the term of the inventors of evil. And what a truly captivating term that is. And it holds so much of our society within its definition. How creative, how incredible today people can be, how incredibly creative they can be in their wickedness, in their creation of sin, their creation of evilness, that they just find new and new ways each day to push themselves further from the ways of God. And so that's what the preacher and his analysis of society looks at. He comes to this conclusion. There's wickedness here and there's wickedness there. The two areas where a good, God-fearing, healthy society should flourish, in justice and in righteousness, there is wickedness. And so what does the preacher do with this observation, this understanding of corruption, of justice, and of society? What does he do? How does he respond? He responds by saying, "I said in my heart, God will judge the righteous and the wicked, for there's a time for every matter and for every work." See, he comes to the understanding that God is just and that ultimately God will judge everyone. It may not be in the timing that we want, but really, why should what we want matter if it's in contrast with the ways of God? God will judge. And we need to be okay with that and okay with the timing of that judgment and know that it will take place. And in a way, we can take comfort in that. In Romans 12, we read, "Beloved, never avenge yourselves, but leave it to the wrath of God. For it is written, 'Vengeance is mine. I will repay,' says the Lord. To the contrary, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him something to drink. For by doing so you heap burning coals on his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. And so, as I said in our introduction, this natural curse nature, with this natural desire to get even, to get vengeance, that is the old self, the one that we've put to bed. We've put that guy away. And so don't give in to that, but rather overcome evil with good. Say, I'm going to choose to love those who hate me and trust and know that God is just and he will bring those things about. So of all the things that the preacher can choose to do or to not do, ultimately what he does, even if he does other things, firstly, he trusts the Lord. He knows that the Lord is faithful and that judgment will happen. That isn't to say that he doesn't do anything else. There might be times where justice needs to take place, and maybe you're an officer of the law or an officer of the court, or you're there and you're leading your children and your family, or you're in some position of power where you need to bring about justice and judgment and enforce righteousness, and then that's okay. You need to do those things. The Bible still gives a reference of there needs to be human judgment and justice as well, and there's divine justice as well. But at the core, that we have this understanding that God will judge, that there's nothing, there's no one that escapes the judgment of God. And you can take comfort in that, because there will be plenty of times, an abundance of times, where you will see wickedness and you will see unjustness and a lack of righteousness, and there will be absolutely nothing you can do about it. You can look at some of the nations around the world and you can see how they're treating their people and how they're leading their people. And you can say, this is evil, this is so unbiblical, this is so against the ways of God, and there is absolutely nothing that I can do about it. But I know that you are faithful, Lord, that you will take care of this. Our text continues in verse 18. We have this statement of how man is like the beasts of the land, that is, the animals. This is a statement that should bring humans down a peg. Oh, you think you're so impressive. You think you're so wonderful. And it's been a common thought throughout history. You can look at the pharaohs who thought themselves to be like gods. You can look at the Tower of Babel and how they viewed themselves as gods, and they were so proud of themselves. And so God scattered them and confused their language because of it. We can often become so proud that we compare ourselves to God. Yet here we are reminded that we are like the rest of creation. We are made, not makers. We are the created, not the creator. And so as the animal dies, so do we. From the dust we came, and to the dust we will go. Now, this is not a statement against the afterlife. In fact, the same language is used in Genesis, where the curse of sin is explained, where it reads, by the sweat of your face you shall eat bread, till you return to the ground, for out of it you were taken. For you are dust, and to dust you shall return. And so it's talking about the earthly death, the physical death. See, the text continues with this question of who knows whether the spirit of a man goes upward and the spirit of the animal goes down to the earth. This is a teaching method to demonstrate the limit of our knowledge. It's factual. Is it factual? See, we have faith. And of course, I believe in the afterlife, and I believe that our spirits go to before God and the judgment happens. And we even see that in this very own text. But it's this idea of the limit of the knowledge of men. In fact, later on in Ecclesiastes, in chapter 8, we read, when I applied my heart to know wisdom, and to see the busyness that is done on the earth, how neither day nor night do one's eyes see sleep. Then I saw all the work of God, that man cannot find out the work that is done under the sun. However much man may toil in seeking, he will not find it out. Even though a wise man claims to know, he cannot find it out. And so there's a limit to what we can know. There's a limit to what we can understand. And so some things we just have to say, I believe that God is faithful in this, and I believe that this will happen. Some like to take the preacher's question and say that it promotes the idea that the afterlife was not a thought in the ancient world. But to contrast that, let me look at, and fast forward with you, to Ecclesiastes 12:7, to Daniel 12:2, and to Isaiah 26:19. So first Ecclesiastes, and the dust returns to the earth as it was, and the spirit returns to God who gave it. So this idea of the physical going into the earth and the spirit of man going up to heaven. Daniel, your dead shall live, their bodies shall rise. You who dwell in the dust, awake and sing for joy, for your dew is a dew of light, and the earth will give birth to the dead. And then Isaiah, and many of those who sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting content. So the ancient world definitely held the understanding, and the very book that we're looking at of Ecclesiastes teaches that there is this afterlife. And so that's not the message of what it's saying here. It's saying that you are just like creation as well. You are affected by the curse. This body will die. And so don't think so highly of yourself. The text continues as most of it has concluded throughout Ecclesiastes. So I saw that there is nothing better than that a man should rejoice in his work, for that is his lot. Who can bring him to see what will be after him? And so we can trust God and enjoy our life knowing that He is God, that He has everything in control, that He is just and He will bring about judgment, that those who have wronged us, He will bring about judgment. Those who have done right to us, He will bring judgment. And to everything that we ourselves have done as well, He will bring judgment. We don't know what will be next. We have seen how quickly things can change, but we know that God knows and that He's trustworthy and true, and we can follow Him. And so the message is quite simple: to live life, enjoy your work, enjoy your life, and know that justice will prevail because God is just. Now comes the question of what are we to do in the midst of a wicked world? We know that God will judge in time. But in the meantime, it feels like we're sitting here and we're like, I see evil everywhere, and I know, God, that you will judge. There's this grand judgment that will come about at the end of time, that you intervene in time and you judge from time to time as well. But what are we supposed to do in the midst of it? In the midst of being in this evil world and looking around, how are we to interact with it? Are we to be accepting of it? Are we to be embracive of it? Oh, God will judge it, and so I'm just going to treat it as if it's all good and it's all true? Absolutely not. I recently preached at a dear friend of ours in the church here. She passed away suddenly. And I preached at her funeral. And this was a Christian funeral for a Christian woman who loved the Lord and was evangelistic. And I preached a message from Jeremiah 29 talking about the timing of God and how the people did not get right with God. And so He sent them away to Babylon for 70 years. And that we felt like the timing with our sister was cut too short, but that His timing is right. After the funeral, I had a conversation with a lady in the parking lot, and she expressed her distaste in my teaching, and that it was too evangelistic, and that there was a Muslim lady sitting next to her, and so I shouldn't just talk about the Christian perspective, but rather I need to be geopolitical and open to all faiths. We had a very interesting conversation. But here's the thing: you came to attend a Christian event in honor of a woman who served Christ faithfully, and you expected it to look differently? In the midst of a world that has all these different branches of wickedness, and all the other faiths, I will strongly say, are branches of wickedness. If they are outside of Christianity, the Bible is clear on that. And you expect us to continue or to accept them all. Your life, and I've taught this in my teaching before, is Christian. There's no segments of the Christian life of this part of me is Christian and this part is not. You're either in it or you're not. And everything that you do should be a reflection of your faith. And so in the midst of the wickedness around us, we shall stand for righteousness. I'm reminded of two verses, and I'll close with these today. Joshua 24:15. And if it is evil in your eyes to serve the Lord, choose this day whom you will serve, whether the gods of your fathers served by the region beyond the river, or the gods of the Amorites whose land you dwell in. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. The people outside the faith, they have a freedom to choose evil and to choose and go off and serve all these other gods and do these other things. They can do that. That's up to them. But for me and my house, we are going to serve the Lord. I don't care how strong the river of the current world and the wickedness is. I'm going to be a rock that stands firm in the ways of God. In the words of Jesus from John 17, I have given them your word, and the world has hated them because they are not of the world, just as I am not of the world. I do not ask that you take them out of the world, but that you keep them from the evil one. They are not of the world, just as I am not of the world. Sanctify them in the truth. Your word is the truth. In the midst of an evil world that will hate you for your faith, hold on to the word of God. Hold on to God and your relationship with him. Be devoted to him and understand that there's a reason why everything that you stand for is opposed to the ways of the world, because you are not of this world. We will face trouble. We will face hatred. We will face people will come against us because of our faith. But as the text in Romans says, bless them, love them, pray for them, and leave judgment and vengeance to the Lord. I hope that's an encouragement to you today as we look through the ending of Ecclesiastes chapter 3. And I hope as you go about this week that you honor God in all that you do and you trust him to do the things that he does, for he is good and he is just. Have a great week.